I'm especially pleased to introduce our speakers for today. Dr. Gary Stewart, a licensed psychologist here in Lexington, and his wife, Dr. Sharon Stewart, is a retired professor, associate dean, and interim dean of the College of Health Sciences at the University of Kentucky. Will be presenting to us on Braver Angels, an organization at braverangels.org that works to facilitate communication between parties that have been separated by misunderstanding, invective, exaggeration. And it is the focus of their work, including Braver Angels, has been on reconciliation through many different vehicles, including those within the Episcopal Church, where I have met them and heard them speak. As part of their work, they became involved with Braver Angels, an organization that aims to transform polarizing attitudes in our country. Gary completed moderator training and has helped facilitate several of the workshops. Sharon organized a collaborative League of Women Voters / Braver Angels workshop in Lexington, which Gary co-facilitated, and they co-led a workshop at Christ Church Cathedral. They're involved in several organizations focused on justice issues. Gary serves on the Episcopal Diocese of Lexington's Commission on Racial Justice and Reconciliation, and is a member of the NAACP and the Lexington League of Women Voters. Sharon is vice president of the Lexington League of Women Voters, volunteers with Christ Church Community Cupboard, and is involved in the Lexington Building a United Interfaith Lexington through Direct Action. Gary and Sharon, the floor is yours.
Thank you. We're glad to be here today. We see names of friends that are on today, so we are glad to see you, and we're glad to be part of this today, although this is our first time to present to the Christian-Muslim dialogue. We are not without connections with the dialogue. Actually, we both go back into the late 1980s and 90s, when we were both involved with the Interfaith Dialogue, which were sponsored at that time by the National Conference of Christians and Jews. And then I was on the board at the time when the Muslim faith was included in that dialogue. My personal relationship is with someone you may know well, John Parks, who's now deceased, who became prominent in the Muslim community. And he was a mentor of mine in my training of psychosynthesis back in the 1980s. We also have other connections that Sharon will now share.
Well, first of all, it's exciting to see how many names we recognize who are attending today. So thanks for coming. What I wanted to add was that we also knew the Nasser family, or know the Nasser family, and knew Muhammad before his passing and knew his involvement. Munira and Nawal and Samia and Muhammad have been friends of our families for like 30 years plus. Our children went to school together. Hi, Munira. And it's just exciting to reconnect again after all this time. So it's just exciting all the way around to be part of this. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready for slides, Addison.
Give me just a second.
Okay.
I'm finding them. There they are.
Okay.
And maximize.
Okay, so if you can go to the next one of our story. And our part of involvement that's led us to Braver Angels began several years ago with our involvement in the Episcopal Church's becoming a beloved community. What that is, it's Episcopal Church's response, a long-term commitment to racial healing, reconciliation, and justice. And they have created a path for Episcopalians to address racial injustice and grow as a community of reconcilers, justice makers, and healers. And there are 4 parts to the quadrant. One is telling the truth. Another is proclaiming the dream. Another one is practicing the way. And another one is repairing the breach. And we were part of a couple of study programs. One is the Way of Love, which was a way of proclaiming the dream, how we are to be, living out our faith and our baptismal vows was part of that. And now repairing the breach and practicing the way, we have been involved in a program from the church called Sacred Ground, which is a study that looks at the history of our nation, and particularly the peoples of our nation, of the Native Americans, the Asian Americans, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and all immigrants, and looking at the truth of our history and opening our eyes and seeing how we can become more of a beloved community with all the people that have been part of our history. And that led to our concerns about the issues confronting us now, particularly the polarization in our country. And we discovered Braver Angels and saw that they had a very unique way of bringing people together that was very effective in allowing people opportunities to share their concerns and to be able to do that openly and freely without concerns of reprisal and confrontation, and come to see and learn about others, and also to understand how we have common ground and how we can come together to work towards resolution of those things that are of concern and difficult for our time. Next slide, please. So we would like to know what your exposure has been to Braver Angels up to now, and your interest and questions, and we would like to ask you to put your comments in the box so that they can be known to us at the later point, and we can begin to respond to those after we're done with the first part of the presentation.
Thank you. Okay, take a look at these words that were spoken by Abraham Lincoln at his 1860 inaugural address. The Braver Angels organization was inspired by these words, in which Lincoln not only called on Americans to summon the better angels of our nature, but called on us to find the courage needed to pursue a more perfect union, with malice toward none and charity for all, with firmness in the right. To meet the current moment at this time of national crisis, Braver Angels believes we need more than civility. The organization asserts that we need to challenge ourselves to work together when we disagree. According to Braver Angels, we need bravery. The name for the organization, which was called Better Angels when it was founded in 2016, was changed to Braver Angels in 2019. Next slide.
Oops.
Okay. Braver Angels was founded as a national grassroots, citizen-led, bottom-up nonprofit organization run mostly by volunteers that largely reflect the demographics of our nation. It was created in response to the crisis of political polarization. Its initial purpose was to depolarize American politics. But since that time, Braver Angels has expanded its scope to include depolarization around a variety of concerns, such as abortion and race, LGBTQ concerns, and a host of other controversial issues. The references you will see about Braver Angels that target political polarization reflect this earlier emphasis. Please keep in mind that the principles, strategies, and skills promoted by Braver Angels are transferable and can be applied to a myriad of divisive ideological issues. The movement is intended to bridge divides between citizens on current issues by transforming our attitudes toward each other. The vision of transformation is accomplished through trainings, workshops, and other platforms, using a unique design and process for fostering and sustaining more civil conversation and forming alliances. Braver Angels champions share human values such as respect, empathy, courage, curiosity, deep listening, and contextual understanding. It seeks to humanize the other through learning others' stories and to heal wounds that divide us. So Braver Angels seeks to discover what it means for all of us to become we the people versus us and them as American citizens. Next slide, please. So what we're going to do now, with Addison's help, is to take a few minutes to view a film that encapsulates the Braver Angels movement and its critical components. So Addison, give it a whirl.
I'm getting there. Here we go.
Okay.
Let's see. And you see the people, the skydivers? No.
Right now we see the film.
We can click on the start the film if you want me to. Because it's up on our screen.
Yeah, I have shared it properly. I'm just trying to get to it. Oh, there we go. I've got so many windows.
Passionate subject, and we've always had deep political disagreements. That's the way it's supposed to be. But we've gotten to the point where people can't even talk to one another. Americans no longer see their political opponents as simply wrong or misguided. They see them as bad people whose ways of thinking are dangerous and incomprehensible. They see them as enemies. This level of rancor and mistrust threatens our democracy, and it makes it harder for us to move forward as a nation, regardless of who the president is.
The fact that we live in what feels like, some people call it, a cold civil war, that takes a toll on all of us.
We've been excommunicated from a lot of our friends in the last couple of years, and it makes me sad.
This is one organization that's doing a lot to kind of overcome that and get people back to where we were, which is neighbors, friends, communities.
Better Angels was born in response to the crisis of polarization. We are truly bipartisan. From our staff to our funding to our board of directors, we're evenly split, half conservative, half liberal. Everything we do comes from the bottom up. We're an almost entirely volunteer-led operation. We wanted to see, could we get together a group of folks who'd voted for Trump and a group of folks who'd voted for Clinton and get them in a room together to see how can we bring people together to not get them to agree or to come to the middle, but to maybe change how they think about one another.
You know, it's funny, I think a lot of people would look at 2020 and argue that this is the least hospitable time for the work that we're doing because we know that our politics has a tendency to bring out the worst in us. But it also is an extraordinary opportunity because this deeper project of civic renewal, of healing the relationships that exist between the American people across the cultural and political divides, the importance of this project is going to become clearer and clearer to people over the course of this election.
A lot of people are going to have to let off steam. I really believe that it's better to do it in a productive way, where they see each other as fellow human beings. It inspires me every Better Angels debate I take part in.
When you're there in person and you have to face the person you're talking to, we remember suddenly the rules of civil discourse and kind of how we should act in society. It's something that really distinguishes this form of conversation and debate.
It's all well and good to talk about civility and being nice to people, but the missing ingredient is courage.
In 2020, we also need courage. The courage that it takes to have a difficult conversation, to put yourself out there.
What we've been saying is that this year, it's not enough to call in our better angels. We have to call in our braver angels.
The name Braver Angels captures the evolving spirit of Better Angels. We have to be willing to summon the courage to see the best in the other side, to see the best in our fellow Americans.
Courage means becoming a leader in your own community who's standing up for America, not just for your political party or your tribe or folks with whom you share an identity, but standing up for something larger that we can all believe in. If we can create a large enough movement that is clamoring for a more courageous style of politics, we can change the incentives.
That's something that can only be achieved through what we call patriotic empathy, this idea that your love for your country is demonstrated in your love for your fellow American. As Braver Angels, we're able to lean into that with courage and boldness.
It will make you feel like we can serve this place and our country can serve humanity in a way that is actually beautiful and actually does us justice.
This is not a left-wing movement, this is not a right-wing movement, but it is indeed an American movement. We still have it in us to be champions for what is right and what is graceful and what is decent here in the United States.
In this time of public health crisis, Braver Angels is taking its work online. hosting weekly online debates, virtual book discussions, concerts, skills training courses, and soon, one-on-one red-blue conversations. As Americans stay home to protect their fellow citizens, Braver Angels is bringing us together in new ways and helping us find the courage needed to transcend our partisan differences and overcome this challenge. Go to braverangels.org, sign up to join our email list, and at the end of the day, try to treat each other with respect, empathy, and find the courage needed to talk to people, even if, and perhaps especially when, you don't agree with them.
Gary and Sharon?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll be back to the slides.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Whoops, wrong button. Oh, and a share. Sorry about that.
Complicated.
Yeah. Oh, and here we go.
All right, great, thanks. So this is the slide that follows the video. So in summary, this video describes the goals of Braver Angels, including how it seeks to change how we see each other, to see each other as fellow human beings. It seeks to heal relationships across racial, cultural, and political divides. And as we mentioned earlier, the original focus was on political divides, but it has expanded to a variety of issues since then. And also, since this is a 2020 film, some of the activities that it said will be coming online are actually online, such as the one-on-one conversations and so forth.
And quite a few more.
And quite a few more, okay. And it seeks to harmonize our discourse about issues that confront us and reestablish civility. Braver Angels seeks to encourage people to be leaders in their own community and stand up for what they believe in, and to create a movement of empathy that involves love for our country that's demonstrated by love for one another. Next slide, please. So an important challenge to our country, to our communities, and to our way of life is polarization. There's evidence to suggest that we are now as polarized as we've been since the Civil War. Americans no longer see their political opponents as simply wrong or misguided. They see them as enemies who must be defeated at all costs. Next slide. So how is Braver Angels attempting to respond to the challenge? Well, Braver Angels does not accept the normalizing of this extreme polarization. It rejects the breakdown of political and social life that extreme polarization brings. The work of Braver Angels is about building civic trust in the country. It's about healing the wounds between polarized groups. Braver Angels is focused on challenging institutions to be better, building communities together, and discovering what it means to be part of a more unified country. In short, the work of Braver Angels is about supporting a more perfect union and about inspiring the beloved community. Next slide. Braver Angels describes its vision, mission, and values as follows. The Braver Angels vision is that citizens of different political beliefs and different backgrounds get to know each other as individuals and begin to heal the divisions that are endangering our country. The mission is to unite Americans of different political, ideological persuasions in a working alliance to depolarize America. And its values are respect, civility, empathy, goodwill, and courage. Next slide. So how does Braver Angels intend to bring about the depolarization of attitudes and behaviors? Well, Braver Angels recognizes that political and ideological beliefs and views about issues such as race and immigration are complex. And a person can belong to a party or a group and not agree with that party or group's positions on every issue. And similarly, one can belong to no party or group and yet have an overall leaning in a particular direction. So with that in mind, the organization welcomes people with strong convictions and principles. It believes that the best way to achieve a more perfect union is not to ignore these differences, but is by being forthright and transparent. Next slide. So depolarization is difficult and complex. And as Lincoln noted in his inaugural address, the occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise to the occasion. Next slide. Gary.
We are going to show you a second video in just a moment. And this video is a conversation between two of the founders of Braver Angels, who will be talking about the principles that undergird the Braver Angels approach. These are listed up here in the bullets. And they're also going to be talking about the method that they created to allow people to have a place in which they could come together, an environment that facilitates civil and rational discussion, to teach skills that can help people in these conversations, and to allow them to provide an opportunity to practice the skills so they can transfer them into their daily encounters with others. So next video, please. And this video is titled, "What is Braver Angels?"
Thank you.
Take a moment for Addison to bring it up.
Yes, indeed. Getting there. Here we go. Found it. Let's share. Is this the one?
Oh, no, it's not. It's not. That's the last one.
My apologies.
It's what is Braver Angel? That's it. Okay.
Braver Angels is a national grassroots citizens movement dedicated to three principles. Number one, the rancor, the divisiveness, the hatred of others who disagree with you, the hyperpartisanship is a trend that has gone way too far in this country, and we need to put a stop to it right now. The second one is that despite our disagreements, our robust disagreements, and we're not trying to get people to change their minds here or convert to the other party, but despite those disagreements, there is some common ground. And for our posterity and for our sake of our democracy, we need to find that common ground right now. The third principle is that we can create a space in our lives, in our society, beginning with us as individuals and the groups we're a part of, and ultimately with our government. We can create a kind of depolarized zone, okay, where the divisiveness and rancor is outside that zone. We're operating within that zone in this different kind of way that is not so polarized and filled with rancor. And that building that zone of depolarization is crucial for our country, and we need to do it right now.
So what we've created with Better Angels is a container, a set of processes that encourage people to listen deeply to the opinions and the values and experiences of people on the other side of the chasm. And I learned something about you, and you returned the favor to me. And the core two questions there are, what values and beliefs does your side have that you think are good for the country? Values, policies, and beliefs. Your side, good for the country. And then the second question, what reservations or concerns do you have about your own side? So in sum, we teach effective communication tools for communicating across political differences. And then we have people practice those skills and then talk about what went well with the practice, what were the challenges. And then people can go home and try these with their friends and family.
Strong disagreements are natural in a democracy. In a free society, we're not trying to change people's positions. What we are trying to change is how they think about each other as citizens. I mean, if there's one thing that everybody has told us when they come to these Better Angels meetings, they say, this level of rancor has gone too far. You know, I'm here because I want to do something.
I have seen people change in some powerful ways that affect them as they go out in their lives. And if we can spread that, far and wide, I believe in my heart that this can transform our country from the bottom up, because I don't think it's going to get transformed from the top down anytime soon.
Okay, so back to the slides, please. This may take a moment for so as we're waiting for the slides to come up, you can see that some of what was said in that conversation were also emphasizing some of the things we've said up to now. Now, Braver Angels actually began in 2016 with one workshop. It was called the Red Blue Workshop. And what was done was they brought people together who were Trump supporters and supporters of Hillary Clinton. And they wanted to discuss the results of the election. It was a 2-day workshop, and it really went well. And confirmed for the founders of Braver Angels that the strategy that they had for these conversations and the way in which they were constructed, as it was just briefly expressed, can work for people who are very, and in some cases, bitterly divided. And it was a wonderful story because some people came out of this making friendships that have lasted, and they've joined together to form alliances. We will actually show you one of those stories at the end of the presentation. But what has happened from the beginning of that one workshop, you see now that in front of you there are a wide variety of platforms in which Braver Angels is trying to address the issues facing us today. And they have debates, they have group discussions, they have skills trainings, they have a debate program on campus, they have one-to-one conversations in areas of people talking to someone else that's of a different race or culture or ethnicity. They also have them for people who are of different generations, who live in different areas, and also for the red-blue, the differences in political ideology. They have films, they have forums, special groups, and they also have a variety of media options, including videos, such as the ones you've watched, podcasts, and the John Wood Jr. show, which invites people who are leaders in their communities to talk about the issues facing their communities, their points of view, so that people can be a lot more informed for themselves and as they seek to try to understand these issues and the views of others. So next slide, please. So what makes Braver Angels work? Actually, of all of the initiatives that have begun to try to address the problem of polarization, Braver Angels is cited as leader among them. And one of the reasons why they've done so well, and you heard this briefly expressed in the previous video, is that programs are designed to create a safe place and a space for people to meet as strangers. The design allows for open expression of concerns about important issues, but it has clear guidelines and guardrails and facilitation for the conversation that ensures that as people enter into them, they can feel free from reprisal or confrontation as they are expressing their own views. The objective, as was stated in that video, is for humanizing the experience by knowing the other person's story. We saw in the chat that the mission and what you do is very much like this in terms of your dialogues, and you probably do know how it does make a difference when you get to know the other person's story and you get to know them personally, that it changes your understanding and your perspective. And you're looking for and trying to understand how the other person sees the world and understand their experience in our society and culture at this time. You're also asked in these workshops to reflect on your own views and experiences and discover together where there's common ground between you and others, so you can begin to collaborate and work together towards those things that you share in common as concerns and you want to make a difference about. Next slide, please. So there were two questions that were stated in the video, and that is from the Red Blue workshop, and that was asking people what did they think that their party's view and policies, why they were good for the country, and they were also reflect on what were their concerns about that. And in the workshops, there are two other important questions that are asked, and these are really essential for the outcomes of these conversations. And the first one is, what did you learn about the other person's views and values and concerns? And what did you see that you have in common? These questions and the ground rules for Braver Angel programs are really indispensable. They really make a difference in why these work so well. They help people to become focused, to build trust, to see the humanity of others, and realize areas of common ground despite the differences that exist. Next slide, please. So there are some skills that are involved in the Braver Angels programs. And these that you see right here are probably common to all of you. They're really common to most any groups. But they're also important to that people are reminded of them and their reviews. So they involve listening, that you're really listening carefully to try to understand the other person and their experience, that you're curious, you want to know more about how they came to this point and this place and their position regarding a particular issue that's being discussed. That you're really seeking to more deeply understand that experience and that view and why that's important to them. You want to personalize your own view by using I statements. And very, very importantly, you're really showing the intention to see the perspective from the other side. You really are wanting to learn as you're involved, and hopefully that'll open you more to be able to see things more broadly and to be able to share perspectives with each other in an open way. Next slide, please. And then there's some advanced skills, and one of them is taking perspective. And in this case, what this is meaning is to look at a value or perspective that you agree on before introducing some ways in which you see things differently. So you might say something like, if it were a topic of immigration, sounds like we both want an immigration system that's fair to immigrants. And you can offer something also maybe on your own side to say, you know, the people in my group, I don't know that they have done as good of a job as they can do. I do think that some of the things you're telling me might also be very, very beneficial that I haven't thought about. Positivity, to offer something that's positive about the other side. Similarly, you could say that your group has really picked up on concerns that my side has not yet looked at very carefully. You can acknowledge when disagreeing, keep acknowledging the other person's view, saying something like, you know, I hear your concern about this policy. My view is, and then you can introduce something that you've been thinking about. And the last one, very importantly, is that these conversations, even though they're in this environment and it has a structure and the guardrails, the topics can evoke strong emotion and reaction and What's really important, if that happens, if it should escalate in any way, just don't go there. Just pause, say to the other person, you know, I get your point, and I know we differ on this. How about we pause at this point, and then we can consider it some more at a later time. How about that? So next slide, please. So in these conversations, it's also important to set good expectations or realistic expectations. And some things that are suggested as expectations to a band, and this was also stated earlier in the video that you saw, that you're going to be able to persuade the other person to change their core attitudes or beliefs. That you would expect that the facts would all be agreed to and followed, that you would expect that your other person in the conversation is going to match your openness. If they happen, fine, but it's not to try, that's not the motivation. You're trying to have a conversation that you're both learning from. And then there are some things that really are core principles for why these work. And they have to do with the respect and curiosity and openness that you bring to this, and hopefully the other person does, that you seek to allow the other person to save face. You're not going to criticize them or in any way and portray them as lesser minded than you are in any way. And that you'll find that most people in a relationship really do have something in common in terms of their values and their concerns. And this is really what is importantly revealed when these conversations go well. And it's an important outcome. Next slide, please. So we are going to let you know now about one of the workshops that's a foundational workshop for the skills for depolarization. And it's called the Depolarization Within Skills Workshop. This is the workshop that Addison mentioned that Sharon and I presented with the League of Women Voters and Braver Angels, and also at the Cathedral in Lexington. And in this workshop, what they're really looking at is, it's 3.5 hours. That's what you need to know when you're actually in the workshop. We're going to give you kind of a short version of it to give you a sort of a glimpse of what's involved, so that you can see and that you might want to then decide to participate in it. It also is really important, as it said in the video you watched with the two founders, when Bill Doherty said that it begins with us. That's why the depolarization is so important, that we do some of this work within ourselves first before we're trying to engage with others. And they also talked about building this zone. So that's the environment that's created so that these conversations can occur. And that the one that he talked about was that they involve teaching some skills here. And it's really important that these skills are practiced. So the workshop involves a productive discourse. It involves these expectations and rules that we're going to give you a little more information about. And this workshop then has a moderator or a trained facilitator. And practice. Absolutely. And that the moderator helps to keep it focused and on track, and encourages people to be self-reflective, to affirm their own views, as well as to examine their own views. Next slide, please. So these are the ground rules that people agree to, and they're very essential and important. We're all here to understand and explain our views, not to convince other ones to change their mind. I think some of these you're going to see are similar to what Addison said at the very beginning of this presentation, that you probably use each and every time that you have these. That we speak for ourselves and not try to speak for others or represent any other outside group. That you stick to the spirit of the activities designed for each stage of the workshop. So one of those essential questions that I mentioned was what did we learn from listening to others? That's all they do at that part in the workshop. And you resist any urge to explain your own view or to bring something else up. And that's a role of the moderator, to keep bringing people back to that. And by the way, what I didn't say about that, the ground rules, is that everyone acknowledges that they allow the moderator to redirect them if inadvertently they should go off track in some way. Then the last one here is just standard things, probably things that all of you are familiar with when you're involved in group discussions about taking turns, not interrupting, listening to everyone, allowing space for others, respecting others, and so on. Okay, next slide, please. So the goals of this particular workshop are to gain awareness of our own inner polarizer and ways to counteract it, which will be coming in a couple slides. Learn skills for being critical without stereotyping, dismissing, ridiculing, or being contemptuous. To learn skills for interviewing in a constructive way in social conversations that might veer into contempt and ridicule for others who hold different views. Next slide, please. Okay, so in a workshop, these are some questions that are asked for of the participants for self-reflection. So at this point, if you want to, you can become engaged in this. You can do it privately. No one's going to know your answers to these questions, but these are used to have you become more aware of where you are right now in terms of your reactions to others. And as you think about these questions, the way they're responded to is it suggested that you think about, do you respond to these often, sometimes, or rarely? So the first one, how often do I find myself thinking about those people on the other side, ideological side, without much regard for the variation among them? Second, how often do I find myself assigning mainly self-serving or negative motives to the other group and mainly positive motives to my own group? How often do I find myself focusing on the most extreme or outrageous ideas and people on the other side, thereby making it hard to see how a reasonable person could remain in that group? How often do I find myself comparing the worst people on the other side with the best people on my side? How often do I feel a rush of pleasure with friends when we ridicule those crazies on the other side? Okay, next slide, please. So again, remember the answer would be often, sometimes, or rarely. So you can just kind of note your own reactions there for yourself. Sometime later, you might want to share them with someone you know and you feel comfortable with. So next question is, which of the descriptions below, you see there are 5 of them, is closest to your overall or most common emotional attitude towards most people who support the other side? So this could be any group or that have different ideological views, political views, views on issues such as racial justice, the CDC guidelines for the pandemic, a whole host of things. Just choose one, you know, that for this exercise right now that is important to you. And identify the description that's closest to where you are now, and also to where you might aspire to if you aren't in the place that you are now and you want to aspire to be in a different place. So your reactions could be, hey, these people who are different on this are enemies and they're out to destroy the country. Disdain, they're just ignorant. They don't know better, or they should know better. Pity, they're well-meaning, but they're being duped by the leaders of their group. Basic respect, they make contributions, even if they're mostly off base. And the last one, respect and appreciation, that they actually make unique and necessary contributions, even though they may differ from my views. All right, next slide, please. All right, so if you were in the workshop after these reflections that you did on your own, then you would be paired up with someone, usually someone you don't know on purpose, and you would have 4 minutes to tell the other person and they with you about what you've learned from the polarizing questions. And then after you and your partner had that opportunity, then everybody's brought back together to share what they learned with the whole group. The value and the importance of this is to realize that all of us carry some degree, you know, of these reactions, and we're all affected by some groups or some issues. And the more that we can bring them to light, we be aware of them and share them, that helps to diffuse them some for us, help us to be more aware, and help us to be more equipped and ready and open to be engaged with others when we're with others that are expressing differences that evoke these things in us. Next slide, please. So there are strategies to counteract these once you're aware of them. And the two basic ones that are used in this workshop are to challenge your stereotypes and to make depolarizing distinctions. So if we can go to the next slide, we'll see more about these. And these are employed in the workshop. And as Sharon mentioned, these are not just ones you do in the workshop, but you're encouraged to keep practicing them and use them in your everyday life. So the first strategy is to challenge your stereotypes, and how this is understood in terms of a stereotype is how outsiders oversimplify, dismiss, lump together, and disparage the other. So there are 5 of these components that you see here. One is to tell yourself that the other side is actually more varied. There are actually individual differences within the group, and you really want to get to know the individual and proceed with them in your shared understanding as a strategy. To acknowledge that the views and motivations are no doubt more complicated than the rhetoric you might be hearing on the evening news. To recognize that the life experiencing that's informing the views of the other are maybe different from your own. And this is really an important part of the workshop, because one of the things that's done is people are asked to talk about how they came to this place on this issue in their lives. And when you hear the person's story, you really see that the trajectory brings some people actually almost 180 degrees from one place that they were at one point in their life to another point because of life experiences they've had. And it's very, very helpful, as you well know, I'm sure from the dialogues you've had with each other so far, of having that appreciation and how people have been changed in their life. The next one is to develop relationship with a variety of people who are different from you. And as you all know, again, probably from your own life experiences, that the more deeply you get to know someone that's in your case, maybe Muslim, Christian, or in other ways that you've had different life experiences, you really begin to see the humanity that exists between you and the other person, and how much you actually, share probably in terms of some of your values and concerns. And the last one is also very important: to read and listen to thought leaders on the other side who present complex arguments. Sharon's going to share it at the very end, some of the resources that are on the website. We already showed you a slide that has offerings on that you can go to. It's really rich from Braver Angels. Of course, there's a lot of other resources, but it really helps to be able to get good information, solid information that comes from the leaders of the side or group that's different than you. Next slide, please. So in terms of another strategy is to make depolarizing distinctions. And this is one actually in the workshop that we've done that people have given feedback to us that said that it was really, really helpful to look at these things in particular. And one really important one here that was listed first is the distinguishing between positions and people. That you can see and realize that a viewpoint is completely wrong without believing that everyone who holds it may be stupid or ill-motivated. The second is distinguish between policies and core values. Policies are obviously a means to an ends and ways to support and enact values, not the values themselves. And in these workshops that I've been involved in, one of them that was mentioned in the video previously was the blue-red workshop, is where people differ sharply on policies of the party. And yet what is realized that they really do share some common goals. They just have different ideas about the way to get there. And then distinguish between inconsistency and hypocrisy. It's really important to resist the pull towards assuming that inconsistency on the other side always reveal hypocrisy. They can be just inconsistency between stated values and actual behavior that come from either blind spots or tensions between competing values, or, as I mentioned, the way we're all changed over time. So I think if we all kind of reflect for a moment, we can see that there are, at least one, probably a number of things that we have evolved and changed over time. It doesn't mean we're inconsistent. That means that we've just evolved in our understanding and view, and now we're looking at it a little bit differently. so that we can allow that for others, and that hopefully they'll allow us that same graciousness to see that we all can make change in time based on our experience. Next slide, please. So there are some things that are important to avoid when talking to the other side. These are probably things that you probably all well know at this point, but they're important to be reminded of, that we don't use pejorative labels, that we don't want to group everybody together and use any of the stereotyping phrases. We don't want to paint all supporters of the group in the ideology with the same brush used for the leader of the group. And particularly, this is a really important one, if you're talking about a particular leader or a person that's identified, that you clarify that you're not putting all supporters in the same box. You're saying, I'm talking only about, name that person right now, not everybody that supports him or her. Next slide, please. Right, so then some more non-polarizing strategies. The first two here are things that we've actually said a little bit about criticizing your own side, your own humility, realizing that, saying, you know, we don't have it all right. There are some things I'm actually concerned about from my group's point of view, and saying, you know, something positive about the other side, affirming, you know, that they've got some things right that maybe your group doesn't have quite as well established. But a very important one, and this I really encourage, this really can bring you up short, is to try this eavesdropping experiment. That how would a rational and well-intentioned member of the other group feel when listening to you describe their side? Would they feel respected, even if they might not, you know, disagree, or would they feel disrespected? Would they feel understood, at least partly, or grossly misrepresented? And it would be important to know that, as you well know. Next slide, please. So in this workshop, it really is about self-reflection and awareness and learning about others. And the participants would be asked to take a couple of minutes to go back over the exercises that we've just covered with you and reflect on which depolarizing strategies they would like to use in the future. Maybe some of them are already being used and they realize that and they're affirming that. And they could also consider what else they might want to experiment with or develop more. And in this case, as through the whole workshop, you're really focusing on yourself as how you want to grow and develop in your capacity to be effective in your conversations with others, and not be a polarizing person, but be a depolarizing person. And then the participants are asked to take a couple of minutes to review and reflect on what they're taking from this, something that they can extend into their daily life, into their activities and commitments and involvements in the community, and their efforts and their involvement in issues, and continue to grow and develop. And they would be asked to share, you know, what action steps they're going to want to take. Yes.
Some people really do this workshop in part because they want to be able to communicate better with their own family members, because there's strife in their family. So the group that you're talking about could be one that's quite narrow, or it could be much, much broader, or it could change over time. But there are a lot of motivations, reasons that people participate.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. And there actually is a workshop that's designed just for that, for family conflicts. Next slide, please. All right, so some final thoughts about this in terms of the long-term perspective. It's not about just having, you know, good aspirations for this. It's also about, you know, being pragmatic about the future, because the reality is that most of our differences have been around for a long time, since the founding of the country, and they're just not going to go away. And the reality is that probably neither side is going to vanquish the other. So it's really going to be important of how we can learn to come together to work towards the important goals and issues that are facing us, and find some good resolutions for all of us. Importantly, to realize that your own depolarizing influence It may take a while to grow. Maybe you're already experiencing that well, hopefully so. But it really grows, one person at a time, and hopefully can grow as you have more exposure with groups as well, and you can have that greater range of influence. And that the people that you encounter just will know that you're a living example, and that they can experience you and maybe have their own view changed because of the way they experience you and the way you can come across to them. A long range goal would be to able to explain the other's view in such a way that they would say, you really got it. I think you really understand where I'm coming from. And as we said, this requires, we've said it several times now, but I can affirm in my own life, as a psychologist, as much as I know, it requires practice, constant practice and daily intention. And also it really helps when you're doing your reading and you're listening and doing these podcasts and get engaged. I encourage it with these debates. Are wonderful experiences, and these workshops and group discussions that are offered, which we're going to be happy to tell you more about after we get into the question and answer session. Okay, so that I think completes this part. What we're going to do now, next slide please, is we're going to go ahead. I think you're going to introduce this one, Sharon.
Well, no, it wasn't. But
okay.
Okay. Well, anyway, we're going to watch about an 8-minute presentation or example of how people have been affected by participating in these workshops. And you'll see that this involves, oh good, that's the right one, a Christian and a Muslim who describe sort of how their relationship changed over time because of their involvement in Braver Angels. So let's watch that for a little bit, and then we're going to have some processing for a few minutes after. Did you want to add anything to that?
No, it's just a wonderful story, and I think you'll appreciate it.
I had a schedule in a little bit.
You are witnessing the beginning of a road trip.
This ain't a hybrid, is it?
Undertaken by two of the strangest political bedfellows imaginable. Greg Smith is a retired police chief and construction worker from rural Southwest Ohio. He's a devout evangelical and an ardent Trump supporter.
I really believe in his values. I really believe that he loves this country. He messes up, but so do I. If I was president, I'd probably be just like him.
What time is your music class, by the way, tomorrow?
2.
Kuyar Mostafshi lives just a few miles away in suburban Dayton, but he might as well be on another planet. He immigrated from Iran and now works as a computer engineer and is an active member of the local Democratic Party.
After the election, I was devastated. I was ready to cut every Republican out of my life.
These two men with seemingly irreconcilable differences became friends through a group called Better Angels, which brings together reds and blues with the goal of, quote, depolarizing America.
Hillary for president! Donald Trump!
Political polarization, or tribalism, has reached a fever pitch in America. Divisions between red and blue are more stark than ever. It's not just polite disagreement. Nearly half of Republicans and Democrats see the opposing party as a threat to the nation's well-being.
No matter what topic you pick now, you're going to get this horrible tribal conflict over it that prevents anything productive from happening.
David Blankenhorn is the founder and president of Better Angels.
Even before the 2016 election, it seemed clear that this was really cancer.
The group's appeal to national unity immediately rang true for both Greg and Kuyar when they met at their first Better Angels gathering.
When you get past the stereotype part of everything, you've got it beat. You got it beat.
To me, it was nice to also see his other side of, compassion and the fact that he wants to listen to me and learn about my background.
They ended up visiting one another's places of worship, and the friendship just grew from there. And on this day, they are traveling together from Ohio to Virginia.
You probably want to make a left.
To attend the first ever Better Angels National Convention.
Both sides think they're being attacked by the other side.
You say you care about the going on, and you hate the argument, you hate the bitter and all that kind of stuff, but what are you going to do about it?
In the car, weighty issues are hashed out. They agree to disagree on abortion, but they do find common ground on guns.
The whole point about training, the whole point about accountability for people that own firearms. I mean, that is a no-brainer.
Where should we park?
You can park anywhere, kid.
They arrive in Harrisonburg, Virginia, where they meet up with other political odd couples from across the country.
I want to hear people who aren't like me. I wanted to hear their stories and understand why they vote the way they do.
I actually have felt polarization a lot within my family. I guess that's kind of where it started.
Because of the polarization, we are finding ourselves in more and more isolation.
Anthony Ginger is the president of the Young Democrats at Graceland University in Iowa, and his roommate, Christian Sarabia, runs the campus Republican group.
Your roommates, even though you basically agree on nothing politically?
Correct. Yes. We believe our opinions strongly. However, we understand there are perspectives other than ours.
What practical pieces of advice could you give to anybody watching about how to have constructive relationships with people with whom you disagree deeply?
Evaluate yourself. You have to want to open yourself up to new ideas, new beliefs, not necessarily to want to persuade the other person.
If any of us are here with the idea that in 3 hours or 7 hours, we're going to get these people to change their mind, it's not going to go well.
The Better Angels have a strict format designed to keep things civil. And it was designed by this man, a marriage counselor named Bill Doherty.
You had a long history of working with couples on the precipice of divorce in some cases. Did this strike you as harder or easier than that?
Oh, harder. These were strangers, and strangers from different tribes. And those tribes have been at war.
Your job is to listen and learn how people in this group perceive this issue.
Here's how a Better Angels meeting works. The Reds or the Blues, whichever group is going first,
We should be willing to serve other people.
in this case, it's the Blues, gather in the center with the Reds observing on the outside.
The idea was to create a process in which there was a little chance that people would get reactive to each other and escalate.
Where do you stand on this LGBT rights, religious liberty issue, and why?
5 years ago, my son came out, and I was nothing but supportive of him, but still it made me stop and think about things a little bit.
2013, I had a non-legal wedding, and we went to a hotel, and we were refused service.
Then the Reds go while the Blues listen.
I see marriage as something that's between a man and a woman.
For the purpose of having children, so that the children have parents that will pass on the values of society.
Very few of us get a chance to hear a group of like-minded people talk among themselves. They're not arguing with anybody.
After the fishbowl, it's direct one-on-one conversations between the two sides.
Experience that the one woman gave about not being allowed to check into hotels, just obviously completely unacceptable in every possible way.
Again, the end goal here is not to change minds, but to reach what the Better Angels call accurate disagreement, which can lead to mutual understanding.
The end goal is humanizing one another despite our political differences.
Humanizing, not getting people to, change their moral compass or something like that.
No.
Let me ask just about this exercise that we've just seen. How did it go for the two of you?
These are deeply held beliefs on both sides, and we've got to talk about them, even if it feels hard.
So hard but worth doing.
Yeah,
Actually, maybe hard but must do.
absolutely.
So what are the takeaways for those of us who struggle to talk politics with friends, family, or colleagues? One, it's worth repeating this, don't try to change anybody's mind.
If you enter into this and they sense your goal is to show them how stupid they are with their perspective, they're going to put their defenses up.
Two, make I statements rather than truth statements.
So I am, for example, really concerned about climate change and what's going to happen to my grandchildren and great-grandchildren's generation.
And three, don't characterize the other side's opinion, just characterize your own.
So don't say, you guys want to just grow government. That would be a red saying to blue. Don't say a blue to a red. Your side just wants to, let people die on the street.
Better Angels is only 18 months old with 3,100 members across the country, and they say they are growing and scalable.
The common thing people tell us is, I have been waiting for something like this, and I've wanted something like this.
Wait no more. Better Angels is open for business and looking to get more conversations started before it's too late. For Nightline, this is Dan Harris in Harrisonburg, Virginia.
Thanks. We can go back to the slides if we can, Addison. And hope that's coming. Okay, there he is. Okay. Well, I'm going to mention a couple things before we get into the outcomes research. First of all, this film, as you saw, was created about 18, or as you heard, about 18 months after the development of this organization. At that time, it was still called Better Angels and not Braver Angels, you may have noticed. And they mentioned that there were 3,100 members at that time. It's far more than that now. But they did mention that it was scalable, and I would agree with that. We have really seen just an exponential increase in terms of offerings and the spread of Braver Angels throughout the country. So there's a lot in this video, and I wanted to let you know that you can access all of these videos that you've seen today and a variety of others by either getting on the Braver Angels website and then choosing to look at the videos that are available, or you can also get to them on YouTube. It's probably easier to do it through Braver Angels, but you can go back and review those. So just to pull things together, because we're going to wrap up here pretty quickly, what we've done today is to give you some information about the Braver Angels organization and sort of walked you through a portion of the Depolarizing Within workshop, what information and skills are promoted there and taught there. And then, of course, you viewed this video about people who've participated in Braver Angels workshops and the impact on them. So I think this video is a pretty amazing demonstration of the impact that meaningful communication and well-structured communication can have on attitudes and relationships. So Braver Angels has been conducting research on the impact of its workshops and events on participants. So if you look at this slide, what you can see is that the findings from this outcomes research about the impact of the workshops is pretty reflective of what you observed in this film. Most participants responding to this survey report that they felt more comfortable with people on the opposite political side after participating in Braver Angels workshops. They felt that they were better understood and that they better understood the other side. They also felt that they had a better handle, a better understanding about their own inner polarizer and learned new skills that they're prepared to apply to deal with polarization and trying to depolarize how they function. So Braver Angels seems to be pretty effective in its stated goals of moving people toward change in how they see each other, in healing relationships, and in encouraging harmonious discourse. So would you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so we hope that what you've heard today prompts you to look into Braver Angels further. And as you ponder what your next steps might be, we urge you to consider this question: what can you do to build bridges and help our communities and our country during a time of many divisions? So you may want to take time to jot down your ideas, and these may include anything from sharing what you've learned through your encounter with Braver Angels to taking a very active, visible public stance and be involved in public organizations and events. So one of the things that we would recommend that you consider as a starter is to explore the Braver Angels website, and it's the first one listed here under the sample resources. That's the national one, and it is replete with information, and you want to take some time to poke around in it because there's just so much that's there. And then also take a look at these other two websites, which have to do with the presence of Braver Angels in Kentucky. So you don't have to be a member to participate in the workshops and events. As we noted earlier, these activities include workshops, debates, one-on-one conversations, podcasts, book clubs, films, discussions, and a lot more. So all you have to do is register for them. You don't have to belong to Braver Angels. But if you want to get more involved, you can join the organization for a nominal fee of only $13 a year. And you can also complete the training to become, if you wish to, a moderator or facilitator, an organizer, or a technical support member. Now, if you want to get involved at the state level or local level, you can contact the State Braver Angels organization or the Alliance using the websites above and learn how you can engage there. There are two alliances in Kentucky. One is in Berea and one is in Jessamine County. You can see here that under the resources, the Berea group has a Facebook page. The Jessamine County doesn't have a separate one, but you can get to it by going to the Kentucky Facebook page. And the state coordinator for Braver Angels is Carolyn DuPont, and I'm guessing that a number of you may already know her, so you can contact her for more information as well. And then finally, we'd be happy to help locate resources for you. If you want to contact us, our email addresses are shown there below. So next slide. Next and final slide. Okay, so we hope now or in the near future, you'll take some time to consider what you're taking away from this session on Braver Angels and how it impacts you. And we hope that you found this session to be of use. We look forward to your upcoming questions, and we thank you so much for your attention. And now, Edison, I think it's time for discussion. So however you want us to do that is.
I'd like to start by asking some of the questions that have come in, and then in a moment I'll ask everybody to unmute and begin talking. So you've answered a question that was important on my mind as well as Stu's, and that was the Kentucky chapters. Marilyn commented that she has had friends in the Louisville area. Are you aware of a Louisville chapter? Just curious.
There is not a Louisville chapter. Oh, do you?
There is not. No, but I've done a Braver Angels workshop in Louisville, and there were some people that wanted to form an alliance there. But at this point, I don't know that they've done that yet. Yeah.
They haven't, but the way that would be done is by working with Carolyn DuPont on structuring that, because there are a few things that have to be done, as you can imagine, in order to form an alliance. But the beauty of an alliance is that then that group can generate its own workshops or discussions around issues in the community. So that's one of the advantages of having a local alliance.
Okay. The funding for Braver Angels, is it strictly through that $13? Well, it's partially through the $13 membership, but I gather that there's some fundraising perhaps that helps fund this on a bigger scale. What do you think? Do you know anything about that?
There is some. I'm just not well informed about what it is.
Okay, very good. Ron asked if that his impression was that the strategies seem to be reflections of spiritual ethics and morals. Can you comment on that? What do you think about that thought?
That's accurate. I mean, when you consider that a lot of this is born out of the notion of creating beloved community, that is very in line with what many of our congregations and what the thinking is among our congregations and among various religions. So yeah, I would say so. Maybe you
I would add to that, though, that in addition to that sort of orientation or attitude, there are skills that are essential, and so we covered those. And then also the structure, creating the framework under which these are conducted, and the facilitation of them is also important. So yes, one component of it is the attitude, which you bring from the spiritual dimension, but there are other components that are also essential to make it work well.
Dominique asks if the PowerPoint slides are available for sharing. Do you need to keep those for your future presentation? Is there any problem in presenting these to our participants?
As long as people want to give us royalties. No, I'm kidding.
Well, wonderful.
Okay. Yeah, we drew from a lot of it's from Braver Angels resources. So we may need to check with Braver Angels about that beforehand, but then we can communicate with you after we've been able to check on that and have it okayed. But as far as I'm concerned, I think we're concerned.
I'm actually almost sure it's fine because they want to get the word out and they publish things that people can use, including these things. So I don't think there's going to be an issue, but we can check just to make sure.
And Sandy and Wendell also are asking if this will work with people who've not been to a workshop. I suspect the answer is absolutely yes. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, a lot of the offerings, and this is actually one of the, as we stated, it's one of the foundational workshops. So, you know, people in this case don't, you know, can come in from any ideology. I think it's just a skills workshop. So some of them like that, the skills workshops go well. The only one that doesn't go well if people have, as well, I'll put it, qualify that, if people don't have a previous experience, is the common ground ones that I was recently on a mentor. We have monthly mentor gatherings from the people across the country that are mentors. And that was the last topic that was reviewed. And some of the mentors said it was really difficult because the people didn't have the right orientation. They didn't have the buy-in, they didn't have the understanding about the structure and the ground rules and things, and it didn't go as well. But other ones are just, it's a script, it's totally constructed. So it's okay for people to enter in brand new to their first exposures. And it's welcomed. People are welcome to come in.
But is the question whether one could apply these principles without going to a workshop? Because that seems like that's the question in part.
And certainly yes. So a couple of personal comments before I ask everybody to open their mic. The Braver Angels has already had an influence on me since I learned about your organization 4 or 6 weeks ago. Having gone to the library page of the website, there is reference to several books that speak to this topic, one of which is The Power of Strangers, which I've just finished reading in recent weeks. I'll be returning it to the library if anybody else is looking for it, and have found it to be a really interesting and helpful book. There's a chapter on Braver Angels. Off the website, I went to the social media training last night, spent an hour with it on how to post without antagonizing the other side, poking the bear. Personally, I know that Trump Republicans aren't evil people, and I've been wanting to find out how to communicate, and this is precisely that sort of training that addresses that desire. And I've also been listening to a few of the podcasts for Braver Angels. And so I commend those to people, and just look them up on your favorite podcast portal. I'll go ahead now and
let me respond to you on that book. I appreciate your actually introducing me to the book, which I also read, and I would highly recommend it to others. And actually what it also does is present the research that supports all of what we've told you about Braver Angels and why it works.
Right. Everyone, please unmute yourselves, and if you like, turn on your video. And if you have any trouble, either speak up or message me, and I'll be glad to assist. So go ahead, and floor is open for comments and questions.
Ron, I think you've disabled some of our videos.
I may have. Is that Deborah?
It is. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay, be right with you, Deborah.
So what was the name of the book again?
It's called The Power of Strangers, Connecting in a Suspicious Time, I think. Close to that. Yeah, the author is Kohan, Koehan.
I'd just like to clarify the question we asked, and you had a good response, Gary, about buy-in. You know, if you try and do this with your family, it only works if the family wants to, if they buy into humility and understanding and soft language.
Yes.
That's why there's the one comment about sometimes you have to just stop the conversation and walk away. You know, that if you sense that that's happening and it's just not going to work right now. Yeah.
Can I share a personal experience with you guys?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay. I live in Indiana. I used to live in Lexington, but I moved to Indiana more than 3 years ago. And I'm involved with the Islamic Center in Muncie, Indiana. And we get some requests about people who are interested in knowing about Islam. And 4 months ago, we had a request from a pastor to meet with someone from the Islamic Center. So I was the one representing the Islamic Center, and I met with him. He asked me about basic questions about Islam and so on. And then we decided to have a weekly meeting where I would be reading the Bible and he would be reading the Quran, and we would meet over lunch at Panera Bread. And it had been a wonderful experience. So far, it had been a very wonderful experience to both of us. So he told me to start with Luke and then finish that, read Acts. He read the first 4 chapters on the Quran. I kept on asking him questions. He kept on asking me questions. It did explain a lot to me, that questions about Christianity that I didn't know and that I had questions about. And when I started reading and asking from someone who already is a pastor who had studied these issues in depth, that opened my eyes to a lot of answers that I didn't know about. And the same thing happened to him. As a matter of fact, after he read the first 2 chapters, he said, I don't know why people had been calling this a diabolic book when it is not. It has a lot of commonality with what we have in the Bible. And I think this is one of the aspects that people are missing, whether it's a political disagreement or religious, coming from different religious backgrounds, is that we don't study seriously what other people's believe in. We just take what the media is telling us and what other people who have these maybe distorted concepts about whether our faith or our ideology or our beliefs tell us. And if we really want to open up to other people and being more tolerant to them, I think we need to study what they really believe in a deeper way. That's my experience, and I have been very, very lucky to get this opportunity. But thank you guys for your presentation. I think you're doing a wonderful job.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your sharing there, because that is a really good example. It's a nice story. It gives me the opportunity to actually say something about one of the newer developments in Braver Angels. It's called one-to-one conversations. Now, your story is a nice one because it seemed to evolve just naturally between 2 people. Sometimes it's not quite as easy, and so they have one-to-one conversations that are structured that help people who are of different orientation, whether that be from race, religion, culture, ethnicity. That's one area. Another area has to be with generations. Another area has to do with your political ideology. And another one has to do with your location, whether you're living in rural United States or urban United States. But I'm really excited about these. I've participated in 3 of the 4, and they've really been rich and very, very positive experiences. But what helps them is they're structured. So it begins with a kind of getting to know each other. You talk a little bit about yourself. I'll give you an example, a little structure of one. And this is the interracial one. And then you talk about, how you identify with your ethnicity and culture and what your history has been within your own group. And then what you do is you talk about what you value about your group and your heritage. And then you dive a little bit deeper and you talk about what's painful or disturbing or despairing for you about being a member of your own group and how you've been treated by others. And then you go on to talk about the changes that you'd like to see in the larger world and changes within your community, and then how each of you might respond as individuals who have learned from each other and in your own community, and to just the people who have been members of that group. You're understanding you're just talking to one person that's a member of the group. There's wide variety perhaps, but at least you have that much more understanding from that particular conversation. They're really wonderful. I really am going to give you all a strong pitch on these. And you can do it with somebody like your example gives, or you can contact Braver Angels and you say, I'd like to have this conversation, and they'll assign you someone. And then you can get engaged. Yeah, no, that you assign, they assign you a partner. Yeah, and then they give you the guidelines. It's a scripted thing to do, and then you can go forth.
So a quick question has come in. I'll just interject. What happens when I gather that the only people who are coming to these types of responding to the invitation are people who are already open and wanting to have the conversation. If we're on social media, for example, there's somebody who is shouting in all caps. I gather that kind of person would not be probably responding to this kind of meeting invitation. That's your experience as well?
For the most part, I think that assumption is true. I do think that some people have come in that are ambivalent and actually have been significantly affected and changed. There are probably a percentage of people that probably are not going to be interested at all and not want to, because they're so immersed in the polarization. So it's going to be hard, but what's important is hopefully that this is a grassroots movement that it builds up, to a tipping point where there's a much greater influence than among people who are more reasonable and open, that want to exchange ideas and acknowledge differences, but do want to come together, and they can become more and more prominent voices that we hear and we know.
Can I add to that, Allison? I was thinking about the wording in one of the films, how what we're trying to do is build a zone of depolarization, recognizing that there'll be some folks that will never really participate. But I was thinking about your question too, on a practical basis. For some of these workshops, you have to have approximately an equal number on either side of a particular issue. And sometimes they're held back from having these workshops because they can't find enough people on one side of an issue to participate. And so, that speaks to what you're saying. So, yeah, it can be a challenge.
Other thoughts and questions?
I'd just like to say that I am interested in having something like this in Central Kentucky. And I see 4 or 5 friends online that I just want to put it out there in case they're interested as well. Thank you so much for what you've done.
You're welcome. So one of the things I would suggest you could do with those friends is there's certainly, you can participate online in a lot of different of the discussion groups or workshops, and you can join in and do that in that way. I think that in person is my personal preference. If you want a moderator to come in and you want to moderate a workshop, please contact me and I'd be happy to consider how I might personally be able to help you out, or have a moderator maybe near you become involved, and contact Carolyn DuPont, who was our the statewide coordinator.
Thank you.
I think it probably goes without saying, but a lot of these workshops now are being conducted on Zoom, and many of those are open to anyone who wants to participate. So if you get on the Bravery Angels website, you can see what workshops are being offered and when they're being offered, and some of those will say that they're open, so you can just sign up for one. But of course, you may prefer to have one that you're creating for your own community.
Yeah, and these are ongoing. You'll see them. They're scheduled months ahead, and even if one is occurring in New York or California, you can still join in on most of them. Not all of them, but some of them are restricted. And also that there are different ways of participating. You can participate in the status of what's called an observer. So you register for it, but you can just observe. You don't have to be a participant in it. But some of them are what you saw briefly in the video. You're a participant in the workshop on the Zoom.
Addison, I might talk just for a second. I'm Stu Johnson, and I've worked in public radio for 40 years and 38 covering politics in Frankfurt. Worked for decades with Ron Smith, and have always enjoyed that time, our fellowship in the newsroom and working in news. What has struck me, and this is not brand new, but there are different, politics in Frankfurt is real. You see it every day. And it just has always struck me that there's a feeling that somehow I'm going to convince you that you're wrong and I'm right. And I think there was a bullet point in your presentation about, maybe the word was vanquish, about where there's never going to be a situation where it's going to be all people of one political view, for instance. There's always going to be people of another political view, or something in between.
Yeah.
So it just, I don't know, it's a very frustrating thing as a reporter all these years, because I have experienced how politics in both Democrat and Republican, both ways, have been harmful to good lawmaking. So I really enjoyed your program. My thought was, that I'd like to pursue this as a news story. And I think you mentioned there's a chapter in Berea.
Yeah, there is. And when I did a blue-red workshop in Frankfurt, there was a number of people in that workshop that were affiliated with Frankfurt's politics. And it really was a nice experience to have them come together. And they actually said it was for them too, to have a forum and a place where they felt freer and comfortable to be able to express their views, but also they were there for the purpose of understanding better the other side, which I thought was a good way for a politician to enter into things, so they would be willing to look at things from both sides. There have also been, I think there's one on the website you can look at it. Bill Doherty actually went to Washington, D.C. And worked with one of the congressional groups there. I think it's actually the congressional groups that has the responsibility to try to have civility among legislatures. That's so he spoke with that group, and I think they had a workshop there. And they are trying to work with a lot of different government organizations. They're also collaborating with many other organizations across the country that have the similar purpose. And they're collaborating with them to try to make this spread as wide as possible and reach as many people as possible that are willing to be reached.
Stu, I have a question for you. Wouldn't a journalist's training include that skill of accurate presentation of a viewpoint which you personally as a journalist might disagree with? I have read stories where the adjectives give away the journalist's perspective, and it's supposed to be a news story, not opinion. What would you what do you think of what's your experience been with that?
Yeah, absolutely, Addison. My gut reaction to your comment is that's happened more and more over the years, where news I mean, it's a frequently tossed out term in terms of fair and balanced, however you want to put it, a balancing a story, but that should always be that's what news is, really. I mean, it's to have differing views within a story. So but it has gotten to, and not in all cases, it's not in all cases, but I personally believe that there is too much editorializing in some of the news stories, you know, and I don't think it needs to be that way, because kind of going back to what I was trying to express was there are people with different perspectives, and to imply or feel like they're wrong and you're right, your political side or whatever is right and they're wrong, that's never going to work. I mean, I don't know if we're ever going to learn that, but it's just not going to work.
Thank you. Marilyn, you had another comment, I think.
I thank you very much for the presentation. And as I watched it and listened to it, I'm wondering if part of the cause of our polarization is that many of our political leaders and our legislators are trained as lawyers. Now, not all lawyers are practicing in litigation or in court environments, but a large number are. You are trained to be confrontational, to be aggressive, to tear apart your opposing attorney's positions, to even, you know, many lawyers use the kind of practice where they will try to embarrass or humiliate the opposing counsel. If that's your training, I think it's really hard to turn that around. I'm wondering if you were successful with lawyers with this type of training, because I recognize, and I can say this because I'm an attorney myself, I see in myself the problems within me about polarization. So that's one comment. The other is Senate Bill 138 that's in the Kentucky legislature right now has one provision that says no student shall be required in any class assignment to advocate for a view he does not agree with. To me, that's the antithesis of what you're saying, that we're not teaching young people to thoroughly understand the opposing view.
To answer your first question about effectiveness with individuals who are attorneys, I don't know that they know the answer to that, because with the surveys and the work that they do, people do not specify their career. So that's a very interesting question. There might be some other way of getting at that, but at this point, I don't know that that information is available.
One thing your question does, though, reflect is something that we brought up, is that we don't want to think of all attorneys as being alike. That there's a wide variety of difference among attorneys and even political elected officials that are attorneys. And although leaders certainly do have an influence on followers, as we've also brought up, there's a wide variety of people within that group that are followers or supporters of that particular leader. So I certainly know from friends of mine that are Republicans that they have a variety of views of the previous president. So that exists. That's one thing. But I think really the causes of the polarization go well beyond whether or not someone's an attorney or not, and that's their orientation, is to take a side and make sure that they win on that side. It's just about conditions, that have evolved over time, as it was said by David Blankenhorn, and it's really been evolving over more than a generation or so in terms of our current status of polarization. And what has to be looked at are those issues in our time and our culture and society and the way people are experiencing their life in our country that are going to be changing it ultimately, as well as the ways in which people are willing to come together to consider the problems that exist.
I wanted to ask Stu, thank you for participating, Stu, as a news person. I think we all recognize that the media business needs to make money, and sometimes they will use inflammatory language or something to sell more media, to be more interesting or something, and so I'm wondering what your comments would be on what your owners of your publication direct you to do to help them sell your product.
And I'm sorry, is it Wendell, right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, I'm in public radio. So, but when you say that, I have to, because people think in terms of commercial radio being more driven by that, the businesses that are all the advertisement in commercial radio. But I can say fairly that in my position as a reporter, I haven't been, instructed or pushed a certain way in my reporting from anyone higher up, or because of underwriting and that kind of thing. So I really have appreciated that. To say that can happen, I'm sure it can. But I mean, there's certain ideas, certain story ideas are suggested. Yeah, that happens. But I think it still goes back to the approach, no matter what the issue is, to realize there are going to be different views of that issue. They're just going to be different views on all these issues. And it's important, I feel like, to include that in a report.
So I listen to public radio a lot, and I think it's great. But once in a while, there'll be an expression like, "Oh, that's due to climate change." Well, how do they know it's due to climate change? I mean, are they authority on the subject? And once in a while, there's some things that are one-sided. I'm sure it doesn't. They try to minimize it. Certainly, they try to minimize it. But I think part of our polarization is due to what the media does to publicize certain things and actions. So I'm not sure how we get around it, but yeah.
Well, for all of your information, Braver Angels has, I think it's a podcast that might be one of their debates on is it the media? So you can investigate it through that podcast. And they've also taken on a lot of other issues, particularly polarization. You can, I think they're very well done. And I encourage, if you want to follow up from the conversation that's begun here, that would be one way to do it.
Could I make one comment? As an African American, especially with commercial TV, I've noticed the difference in reporting crimes. If it's a person of color who has committed or supposedly committed a crime, they will say that he or she did it. They'll give as much detail as they can. This occurred at 222 Aesop Drive, which is in the so-and-so area and so forth. When it's a white crime, it's alleged, and we have to wonder, is this place in Lexington? There are just no details like it is for a person of color. And a lot of times the anchor or the journalist who's reporting shows where he or she stands on the issue by the adjectives that they use as well. And I've been asking for the TV stations here to quit doing that. Equally report crimes, give as much information as you can, but be fair about it. And it's still happening. And it just makes me so angry. I mean, just like somebody was reporting about Breonna Taylor's death, and it was still alleged, and it just makes me angry. And I'm sorry, I can't control that anger.
Well, I think you've given voice to the difference of experience that we have based upon where we are. And you've given a good example that your experience may be different than someone else watching that, but the reason for the difference is because of who you are and who they are. And one of the things that Braver Angels is trying to do as well as possible is to try to bridge that difference, as well as change what you're bringing up is what causes that in the first place. And that hopefully there's more alignment together so that you're not just a voice that's speaking to it, but there's people like myself or others who are also, expressing the same concern.
Thank you.
I would ask you to speak again. I think you did earlier about those people that are completely opposed to these this nice program, that the BA program. They would be the authoritarian people who are striving to do that in their society. And how would you? What is the solution on that, if there is one? And what would you say to that?
Well, I don't know that I'm an expert in this, but I would begin to say, I don't know it's just because a person has an authoritarian orientation. Some of what is known is that people in the current time are aligning with groups for a sense of identity. And if they do, and that is an important part of their identity, they don't want to be put out from that group. So what's observed a lot, if you're on Facebook or just in some conversations that might occur in the context of your own community, if someone makes a statement and they, in that statement, say, I think I can agree with the other political side or this other group, they can sometimes really get blasted and reacted to. And it's as if you're betraying your own group and siding with the other, which all you're doing is you're just, acknowledging that they might have, as we've talked about with this workshop, a good point. But unfortunately, that's one of the causes of polarization. So one of the things that sustains it is that people have fear, and they're afraid of the reaction of people in the group they identify, so they are disinclined to say what they really feel and what they really think more publicly. They might do it really privately with, in the confines of their own home or some other place. So one of the things that hopefully can make a difference is somehow that fear can be reduced. And as it said in the Braver Angels, the reason they decided to be called Braver Angels is it's going to take courage for citizens to be able to say what they believe in and what they really feel, and be able to stand for that and accept what might happen as a reaction of others.
I think what Marilyn said just a few minutes ago it's pervasive in our country. I don't know how absolute it is for the polarization problem or the opposition problem, but this country is based on winning. In its sports attitudes, it is a win and lose country. That pervades people's subconscious minds and their conscious minds as well. That's something that I see that is working against the Braver Angels solution on that. And I compliment you on this program, but we have a bigger problem in this country.
I can't think of a better way to end today's presentation. Wonderful question, Keith. Thank you. And to Gary and Sharon, our heartfelt thanks for presenting today. It's been informative and very helpful, and I appreciate it.